Hey everyone and welcome at the BluGuitar YouTube channel. My name is Emmanuel and today is all about galloping. So long story short, what is actually galloping? That's not even a real music theory term, but something that people use to describe a certain type of riff, actually a certain type of rhythm. Galloping describes a rhythmic movement that combines fast and slow notes in order to create a sound that is very close to the galloping of a horse. So when we think about a horse galloping, we start at child age to imitate that, right? And it sounds like. And when played on the electric guitar using a distorted tone with palm muting technique and being backed up by the bass drum or the kick drum playing the same rhythm, it creates that very tight, powerful, and heavy sound. So those types of riffs have been around since decades. I think the first ones to really, make that big was Iron Maiden. They had some of these kinds of rhythms, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But nowadays, in the 21st century, guitar players took this kind of rhythmic movement, rhythmic basic idea to a whole new level. The whole chugging kind of playing, which, generally describes slower kind of palm muted riffs, is many times combined with galloping style riffs, and therefore it creates that very nice contrast of fast and slow, which certainly defines heavy music nowadays, doesn't it? Well, you can't play fire out, So that's why we thought in the BluGuitar team that it's certainly worth making an episode about that. We not only create the world's best pedal-sized guitar amps, but we also care about you as a guitar player. What comes next in this video? Well, I will break down a couple of galloping ideas in a very, very simple way that everyone can understand. And the way that I will make sure that everyone understands these rhythms is by cutting out fast notes, slow notes, and breaks. So instead of having sheet music, because I know not everyone is into sheet music, and that's absolutely fine, is this simplified way. But before we start to talk about anything regarding guitar playing, let's talk about the tone first. Right now I'm playing my BluGuitar Amp 1 Iridium, which is the perfect weapon for anyone who wants to play basically any style of metal. And even though it's a small size device, it is a fully analog 100 watts 4-channel analog amp. For this video I use a modern channel, not because galloping only works with modern sounds, but just because the channel is voiced in a way that makes finding a sound for galloping quite easy. The main effects that we want to achieve with galloping is tightness, so you need a tight sound for that. The modern channel is quite low in mids, and this is a good way to start out finding a tone for galloping riffs. This doesn't mean that a sound that has more mids is not working with galloping at all, but generally I think that most guitar players would agree that taking out some of the mids increases the tightness of your electric guitar sound. And this is why on the 3-band equalizer of the amp my mids are somewhere around 4.5. So we are low on the mids, but not too low, and this ensures that we still have this kind of juiciness in the sound. A lot of guitar players associate bass with, pressure, and there's some truth in it. The issue with that is that the bass frequencies that are certainly very present in metal music don't generally come from the guitar tone. The guitar needs to have a healthy amount of bass, but when you overdo it, things get muddy rather than powerful. And as we're playing low strings for this kinds of riffs in general, a lot of guitar players also tune their guitars down or use a 7-string guitar, and then generally distorted tones do have quite some bass. I tend to keep my bass knob quite low. Right now it's on 4, and I think that's perfectly enough for this kind of playing. Last but not least, treble. Right now my treble knob is on 5. With the treble knob we control the higher frequencies of our guitar sound. And high frequencies bring definition, bring air, which is something that we don't want to miss when playing these kinds of rhythms. But at the same time, if you overdo them, you'll have a lot of bite in your sound. And in my experience, when you have a good amp that is carefully voiced, setting everything midway is a good way to start out diving into your tone. So let's start out with the very, very classical style of galloping that bands like Maiden used in the 70s. The basic rhythmic idea sounds like this. I'm sure that if you're into metal, you've certainly heard this kind of rhythm before. So let's break down what it actually is. This style of galloping rhythm is certainly defined by the first note, which is a slow note. So we start off with a slow note, and this is why I also played it open. So you hold that for a bit, and then you start palm muting and playing faster notes. I recommend to use alternate picking technique on the faster notes. So in this case, we'll have down, down, up. Downstroke for the slow open note, and then as we have a break, as the first note is kind of slow, it's not a musical break, but it's a break for your picking hand. You can actually use 2 downstrokes in a row. So downstroke, slow open note, palm muted, downstroke, upstroke. And that's really all that it is. So that's the basic idea. Let me play that fast. If you're new to this kind of riffing, right, I'd certainly recommend to slow down, to also use a metronome, and that way you can ensure that you're practicing with a steady tempo, which is very important to get everything tight, and that you're developing a healthy rhythmical feel. In the beginning, I recommend to practice this only with a low open string, so the A string or the E string are ideal for this. Once you get used to this and feel safe with it, you should start combining this with different notes and other techniques that you have already learned. So let me give you an example of how it sounds when you play the exact rhythm but only shift the pitch of the note. And then the next step is to combine it not only with different notes, but also with different techniques. So instead of only changing the root note or the power chord that lies underneath that rhythm, you can also, combine it with all sorts of things that you like about rhythm guitar playing. Iron Maiden did that on the Trooper, right? So the riff is something like this. Now let me just improvise a couple of riffs where I combine the galloping, the original galloping kind of rhythm with random other techniques that just come to my mind and show you what it can sound like. So that is the OG version, the original galloping riff that has been around since, well, the birth of heavy metal, I guess. Now let's get into the more modern, more heavy, more brutal style of galloping. And actually, it's quite simple. All we have to do is change the order of the notes. While with the classic style of galloping, we had 1 slow note followed by 2 fast notes. We're just turning things around here. So we have 2 fast notes followed by 1 slow note. It sounds very simple, but that's it. Let me show you how it sounds. So let's play that again on the low E string and combine that with a couple of power chords and different styles of playing to give you an idea of how it can sound. Same note values, different order, and it's a completely different sound. It instantly sounds more modern and heavier, and I highly associate these kind of riffs with, thrash metal and genres like that came later on. And there are so many cool things that you can do with it, so let me show a couple of ideas that I have. So one very cool way to go about it is combining these rhythms with longer breaks. And again, it's all about creating the contrast of fast notes, bursts of notes, and breaks that creates this very heavy and tight sound. Another very cool thing to do with it is to combine this galloping rhythm with palm muted, slower notes. For me, that is pure heaviness, that is pure energy. Now, once you're getting faster with these kinds of riffs, there's a thing that feels very counterintuitive, which is heavy sound does not come from heavy movements. You're not going to sound heavy when you pick heavy, but you're going to sound heavy when you're playing tight. And I am quite convinced that the less power you put into those movements, the more control you'll gain over those movements. And I think a quite known band to prove this kind of concept is Meshuggah. I believe in 2008 they released a song called Bleed. And it features a very similar rhythm but played at a phenomenal speed. So it's basically the same thing that we've done before. 2 fast notes followed by 1 slow note. But then you add an additional slow note. So you have fast, fast, slow, slow, fast, fast, slow, slow. It sounds something like this when played slow. Now if you speed things up, things change. So on this Meshuggah style rhythm, which is associated with faster tempos, what we should do is play straight alternate picking. I would not do that if I was playing on a lower tempo, something like this. Something like that is quite easy to handle. However, if you're playing on bleed speeds, that's a different story. The faster you play, the more you're relying on efficient movements. In most cases, this Meshuggah style rhythm is played on a lower pitch, so you need to tune down your guitar or play a 7 or 8 string. My 7 string is not set up right now, so I show you an older clip of mine where I use this kind of rhythm. Alright guys, that was it with today's video. I think that everyone who wants to get into this kind of riffing has a good guide here to start with. Let me know in the comments if you liked it. And again, don't forget to subscribe, to leave a comment, to leave a like. And I hope that I see you next time. Have a nice one. See you soon.